He had everything: wealth, power, respect, the corner office with glass walls that touched the sky, yet, on Christmas Eve, he sat alone at a restaurant table for one. No family, no laughter, no warmth. The clinking of glasses around him reminded him of the life he never had, and the silence of his heart echoed louder than the Christmas carols outside. Just as he was about to leave, a small hand tugged at his sleeve, and a little girl's innocent voice asked the words that would change his life forever, "Do you want to have dinner with us?" It was Christmas Eve in New York City, the streets glowing with fairy lights, the air crisp with December chill, and laughter spilling from families reunited after long months apart. Restaurants were buzzing with warmth, joy, and the sweet aroma of festive meals. But at the far corner of a five-star restaurant, a man sat alone. His name was Adrian Steele, the CEO of one of the biggest tech firms in America, a man whose face was on magazine covers, whose net worth was discussed on business channels, and whose every move was analyzed by the media. Yet in that moment, beneath the soft glow of a chandelier, he looked less like a man of power and more like a lonely stranger watching life pass by from behind invisible glass. He stared at the empty chair across from him, one he had reserved but never filled. Once, long ago, he had imagined Christmas dinners with a wife, with children, with warmth in his home. But those dreams had slipped away in the name of ambition, and all that remained now were stock portfolios and boardroom victories that couldn't share a meal or wipe away his quiet ache. Around him, laughter rang out, children tearing open gift-wrapped boxes, couples holding hands, grandparents blessing their families, but his table was silent. He cut into his steak, each bite heavy, tasteless, like chewing through the weight of his own emptiness. Waiters passed by, smiling politely, refilling his glass with water, but none lingered. Everyone knew who he was, but no one truly knew him. He had millions of followers online, but not a single friend he could call that night. For a moment, he thought of leaving, paying his bill, retreating to his penthouse where the city lights glittered outside the windows but not a single soul waited inside. But just as he reached for his wallet, something unexpected happened. A little girl, no more than 8 years old, walked over from the table across the room. She wore a red sweater with a snowflake stitched on the front, her dark curls bouncing as she moved, her eyes wide with innocence. She stopped beside his chair, tugged gently at his sleeve, and looked up at him with the purest smile. "Excuse me, sir," she said softly, "do you want to have dinner with us?" Adrian froze. For a moment, he thought he had misheard her. But then she repeated it, louder this time, with the kind of sincerity only a child could hold, "Do you want to have dinner with us? My mom said nobody should eat alone on Christmas." His throat tightened. The room suddenly blurred as tears he didn't expect burned his eyes. For years, he had built walls so high no one dared to cross them, but this little girl had just walked straight through them with a single question. His fork clattered onto his plate. He couldn't speak. The CEO who had negotiated billion-dollar deals couldn't find words to answer a child's invitation. And then, before he even realized it, he nodded. The little girl beamed, grabbing his hand with surprising boldness, and led him to a table where her mother sat with 2 younger boys. The mother looked up in surprise when she saw Adrian approaching, her eyes widening as recognition flickered. "Sweetheart," she whispered to her daughter, clearly unsure, but the girl only smiled proudly. "Mom, he was sitting alone. You said no one should be alone on Christmas." The woman hesitated, then glanced at Adrian. She saw not the billionaire CEO but a lonely man who looked grateful and broken at the same time. After a moment, she nodded warmly. "Of course," she said. "Please, sit down." Adrian sat at their crowded table, the noise of children, the smell of homemade cookies they had brought in a tin, the warmth of family chatter. It was so foreign to him it almost hurt. He introduced himself awkwardly, but the mother, Grace, smiled gently and said, "We know who you are. But tonight, you're just Adrian, okay? No titles, no business. Just family." Those words pierced him deeper than she could imagine. He watched as the children giggled over their dessert, sharing pieces, arguing over who got the bigger slice. He hadn't sat at such a table since he was a boy himself, before his father walked out and his mother struggled through double shifts, before Christmas became just another reminder of what they couldn't afford. He realized now that he had buried those memories under years of relentless ambition, convincing himself he didn't need such things. But as he listened to Grace talk about how she worked as a nurse, how she balanced her night shifts with raising 3 children, how they still managed to make Christmas special with laughter and cookies instead of expensive gifts, Adrian felt something crack open inside him. He told them almost nothing about his life. He couldn't bring himself to speak of the cold penthouse, the estranged siblings, the empty victories. Instead, he listened. Really listened. And with each story, with each burst of laughter from the kids, with each warm glance from Grace, the ice around his heart melted a little more. Hours passed without him realizing. The restaurant staff began cleaning up, but their table still buzzed with warmth. And when Grace's daughter leaned against him sleepily and whispered, "I'm glad you said yes," he knew that those 7 words would haunt him forever, in the best way. For the first time in decades, Adrian Steele felt like he belonged. That night did not end at the restaurant. Grace invited him to walk with them through the snowy streets, past carolers singing on corners and vendors selling hot cocoa. He found himself carrying one of the boys on his shoulders, something he had never done before. The boy laughed and pointed at the lights, and Adrian laughed with him, a sound so unfamiliar it startled even himself. They ended up back at Grace's modest apartment, where stockings hung by the window and the tree was small but glowing. Adrian had never felt so much warmth in a space so simple. Grace handed him a cup of cocoa, and he sat on the worn couch watching the children tear open second-hand toys, their faces lighting up as if they'd been given treasures. He thought of his penthouse filled with untouched, expensive decorations his assistant had arranged, and for the first time, he hated it. When the children finally went to sleep, Adrian found himself sitting with Grace by the dim glow of the Christmas lights. They spoke quietly, about life, about loss, about what it meant to fight through struggles. Grace told him about her late husband, about how she had almost given up when he passed, but her children kept her going. Adrian told her, hesitantly, painfully, about his own childhood, about the loneliness that never left him, about how chasing success only made it worse. She listened without judgment, her eyes soft, her hand brushing his once in silent comfort. And in that moment, Adrian realized something terrifying and beautiful: he wanted this. He wanted family. He wanted laughter. He wanted to be more than a CEO with a bank account. He wanted to live. The following days changed him. Adrian didn't return to his penthouse right away. Instead, he found excuses to see Grace and the children, helping them shop, joining them for dinner, reading bedtime stories. His board members were confused when he skipped meetings, his assistant panicked when he ignored calls, but Adrian didn't care. For once, he was living for something other than work. He began small acts that shocked even himself. He bought Grace's children new coats, but disguised it as, just found them on sale. He funded improvements for the local community center, but anonymously. He didn't want to buy their affection, he wanted to be part of their world. And slowly, Grace let him. By the next Christmas, Adrian Steele's life was unrecognizable. The penthouse was no longer his home, Grace's apartment was. His company thrived not because he worked endless nights, but because he finally understood the value of people, of connection, of kindness. And when that same little girl who once tugged his sleeve looked up at him a year later, sitting at their Christmas table again, she whispered, "See? I told you Christmas is better with family." He pulled her into his arms, his eyes burning again, but this time not with loneliness, with gratitude. For a man who once believed he had everything, Adrian finally understood he had nothing until that night. One small question, "Do you want to have dinner with us?" had rewritten his entire story. He had the money, the power, the world at his feet, but all it took was a little girl's innocent question to change his life forever. If this story touched your heart, don't just scroll away. Spread the warmth. Like this video if you believe no one should spend Christmas alone. Share it to remind someone that kindness can change everything. Subscribe to Kindness Vibes for more heart-touching stories of love, hope, and second chances. Because sometimes, one small act of kindness can rewrite someone's entire life.